Now, for our presentation, this is a very big personal pleasure for me. I've been an admirer and advocate of Ayn Rand my entire adult life, and done many projects related to Ayn Rand, and to have Yaron Brook from the Ayn Rand Institute is a special thrill. Sorry?
Speak up a little.
Oh, okay. I would say this is a personal pleasure for me because I've been a lifelong advocate of Ayn Rand's ideas. Is that better? I had the privilege, actually, of working for a few days briefly with Ayn Rand in restoring the old classic film We the Living. And I also had a less pleasurable experience doing some of the writing for the two of the Atlas Shrugged movies. The third one is just wrapped filming this past week. And at least there will be a film version of the entire Atlas Shrugged book, such as it is. And hopefully it'll drive people to read the book and learn more about Ayn Rand. Now, I would like to introduce our speaker for today. Yaron Brook was born in Israel, has been an American citizen since 2003.
Sure.
Since 2003. He is the executive director of the Ayn Rand Institute. He is a writer whose writings appear all over, Wall Street Journal, Forbes.com, USA Today. He is on many national radio and television interview programs. And he's authored a number of books, and I think the most recent is Free Market Revolution, How Ayn Rand's Ideas Can End Big Government, which he co-authored with
Don Watkins.
And that book is here and available for sale. And at the end of the meeting, there's some free literature also that you can pick up. And Dr. Brook will also autograph your books for you if you care to buy this book. So our subject today is reclaiming the moral high ground, and I'm thrilled to introduce Dr. Yaron Brook.
Thank you all. It's hard to believe that here in Southern California we need air conditioning on February. You know, one of the things working for the cause of liberty, for the cause of freedom and capitalism, and talking to Tea Party groups and other groups that are focused on this area, one of the things we all have to realize and we all have to understand early is that we're losing. We're losing big time when it comes to economic freedom, when it comes to economic liberty, when it comes to capitalism. This country, the West more broadly, is moving in the wrong direction. And that this is not a new phenomenon. It is not that we've been losing since Obama got elected. Obama, while he might be the devil, was preceded by many, many devils.
Yeah.
We have been moving in this direction for 100 years. 100 years, almost unstopped. And I know Ronald Reagan's a huge hero and everything, but even Ronald Reagan didn't stop it. Government grew under Ronald Reagan. Spending grew. I mean, right now, I miss him, given what we have, right? But put it in the historical perspective. Since, actually it turns out to be exactly 100 years ago when Woodrow Wilson was elected president, we got an income tax and we got the Federal Reserve, all passed in 1913, implemented in 1914. So it's exactly 100 years. We have steadily been moving away from capitalism. Some administrations accelerate it, like FDR, Johnson, Bush, Obama, Nixon. Almost all of them accelerated. What am I talking about? Right? And some slow it down, like Reagan. But that has been the trend. And it doesn't matter how much we've advocated against it, right? I mean, there have been fantastic voices arguing against statism, against the growth of the state, against the complete domination of government over economics. We've had great economists, whether it was Milton Friedman or von Mises or Hayek as an economist. We've had economic voices speaking up and explaining the economics of why capitalism works and statism doesn't. We've had lots of organizations dedicated to this. We've had people advocating for the capitalist case. And yet it seems to have done almost nothing. Almost nothing. And we've got history on our side. We've got facts. We've got reality on our side. Because the last 250 years have basically been a political economic experiment, right? Across the world, in different places, we've experimented in all kinds of economical political systems. Some have a lot of freedom and a little bit of control. Some have lots of controls and no freedom, right? We've had the whole gamut. 19th century America to the Soviet Union and China under Mao. And even China under Mao versus China today with some freedom. We know what happens. You can play with these dials, right? Historically, more freedom, less freedom. What happens when you increase the amount of economic freedom?
Prosperity.
No matter where in the world you do it, no matter what era you do it, what do you get?
Prosperity.
Prosperity. When you respect private property, when you create the rule of law, right? And when you leave people alone, you get prosperity. I mean, there are even places in Africa right now that are tinkering just a little bit, giving their people a little bit of freedom, some property rights, some rule of law, and those places are doing well. Versus the other place where everybody's still killing each other and everybody's starving. So we've seen this. We've seen America in the 19th century with astronomical economic growth. Unprecedented human history, even today. Economic growth, absorption of millions of immigrants, no problem, right? To where we are today, as we've dialed up more and more government involvement, our economy slows, we have more crises, we have more problems. All you need to do is study history, and you can see it. And if you look across the world, you can see East Berlin, West Berlin. You know, to young people, you have to explain these days that the Berlin Wall was built so that West Berliners wouldn't escape to the East, right? Because capitalism is so evil. I mean, we know the story of what happened. We know the story of what happened when the wall came down. And to our shock, Eastern Europe was even worse shape than anybody expected. To our shock, it turned out the Soviet Union wasn't growing as fast as the United States was, in spite of what the CIA and other economists claimed. Right? So we've run the experiment. And we, those who believe in liberty and freedom and capitalism, we won. We won that experiment. The Berlin Wall came down. Okay? Even today, all you have to do is go to a place like Hong Kong. How many of you have ever been to Hong Kong? Before you die, you got to go visit. No, this is a special place. It is astounding. 75 years ago, there was nothing there. It was a fishing village in the middle of nowhere. It's a rock. There's nothing there. There are no natural resources. Right? According to most economic theoreticians on the other side, Hong Kong could not be possible. Because what did they have in Hong Kong? Nothing. The British came there and established the rule of law. They respected property rights. No real safety net. No social programs. Nothing. And millions of people flocked there. They went on boats. Some of them swam. They would do anything, risk their lives, risk their families' lives, to get to this rock where there was nothing. And today you go there, and Hong Kong today has more skyscrapers than New York City. It's an amazing place, an astounding place of wealth, of vitality, of energy, of creation, of hard work, of productivity. Per capita GDP in Hong Kong today, remember 75 years ago, a fishing village, per capita GDP, which is a measure of individual wealth, is equal to that of the United States. The United States, right? Richest country in human history. And here's this little nothing. And again, no oil or some easy way to get rich. No, they got rich by working hard. Okay? So you can see it. It's right there. And you can see the results. I mean, it's amazing. What freedom does is amazing. Doesn't matter. We still turn our back to it. We still reject it. We're still walking away from it. You know, we have by far the best medical system in the world, right? If you get sick, you don't want to be anywhere but the United States, right? Why? Because it's the only one that has some freedom in it. I won't call it a free system because it's not, right? 51 cents of every dollar spent on healthcare pre-Obamacare was spent by the government. So it's only 49% free, right? But that's more than any other place in the world. So guess what? You have more innovation. 75% of all medical innovation in the world happened in the United States. And when Berlusconi, right, the very, very wealthy, corrupt prime minister of Italy, gets sick, where do you think he goes? He doesn't go to France, which has the #1 rated healthcare system in the world, according to the United Nations. Right. He comes to the Mayo Clinic or the Cleveland Clinic. He comes to the U.S. because he's got money. And he knows that if you're sick, now if you're healthy, socialism works fine. Because you don't have to use it. And you get the snivels, you go in, they don't charge anything. It seems to be nice, right? Now, even then it doesn't work fine, but it seems to work fine, right? But if you're sick, this is the place to be, right? So let's work against that, right? Let's change the rules, i.e. Obamacare. And Obamacare is just the beginning. It's going to get much worse. Let's change things to make it less free, so it's less good, so we all suffer. And everybody goes, fine. And you think American people don't like Obamacare? That's a myth. It's not true. The polls that show 56% of Americans don't like Obamacare, you know why they don't like Obamacare? At least 10 to 15% of those 56 don't like Obamacare because it's not single-payer universal health care, because it's not socialized enough. Most Americans either support Obamacare or support something a lot worse. A minority of Americans believe in free markets in healthcare. A small minority believe in real free markets in healthcare. But it works. Who cares? I mean, that's how it works across the board. You look at industries in the U.S. Where do we have all the innovation and creativity? Where does the innovation come from? You know, in iPhone type stuff, right? Programming. Unregulated places. There's no regulation on, very little regulation on this. Programming, there's almost no, you don't need to be a license, you don't need to get a government license to write a software program. You need a government license to shampoo hair in California, but not to write software. Software that runs our airplanes, software that runs our nuclear power plants, software that runs these things. You don't need a license for that. And surprise, surprise, it works. I'm not sure I trust the woman shampooing my hair because she got a government license. But the software works, right? Have we learned anything that innovation happens here? We're basically driving the same automobiles as we've been driving for 50 years. I mean, in the edges, they made them more efficient here or there, but the basic internal combustion engine is the same, right? And the only way, anybody have a Tesla? No. Good. I hate Teslas because rich people drive them at my expense, right? I'm subsidizing it. You're all subsidizing it, and they get to drive it. People who don't need a subsidy, nobody needs a subsidy, but certainly they don't. Yeah, we're all subsidizing it. And they also think then that, ooh, I'm driving a clean car, right? A friend of mine, Alex Epstein, calls the Tesla a coal car. Because to run a Tesla, you have to burn coal to make electricity so that you can charge up your Tesla, right? But there's no innovation in automobiles. You know the last innovative thing we did in air travel? Remember the Concorde? Yeah. Concorde, yeah. And what did we do to that? We grounded it. Why? Because we regulate those things to death. There's no innovation because there's regulation. You want innovation. You want innovation in energy. You want innovation anyway. Get rid of the government, right? We know this. This is history. So why doesn't it happen? Why are Americans or people in the West so eager to turn their back on a system that has been so incredibly productive? so incredibly wealth creating. It's raised the whole of humanity, or most of humanity, up from where? Where was all of humanity 250 years ago?
The Dark Ages.
Yeah, basically, right? So people talk about income inequality, right? It's worse today than 250 years ago. There's more income inequality today than was 250 years ago, right? It is. 250 years ago, everybody was poor. Everybody. 98% of the population was poor. There's a wonderful graph. I can't draw on this wall, but you know, this is time, right? This is the time axis. We'll start 10,000 years ago. And this is wealth per capita, right? And the graph goes, starting 10,000 years ago, goes like this. Fluctuates a little bit, basically flat, and then it goes like that. Like that. When does that happen? Yeah, about 1776. Nice date. Because of the Declaration. What else happened in 1776? See how educated. Wealth of Nations was published. Adam Smith, first real book in economics. What's that?
First Independence Day Revolution.
Yeah. And Wealth of Nations, right? So it's the beginning of capitalism, the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, approximately. Everybody was poor 250 years ago. Everybody. And again, we're turning our backs away from this. So what is it? There's something about capitalism. There's something about free markets that we, as a culture, resent, that we reject, that we find abhorrent, that we turn our backs against it every single time. Okay? Every single crisis that happens, who's to blame? Capitalism, bankers, Wall Street, free markets, always. We don't even, before we even know the information about what happened, right? Before the economists have even studied it, we know. It has to be Wall Street. It has to be. Why? What is it about capitalism that's so abhorrent? What's capitalism about?
Self-interest.
Yeah, she's a shortcut. What's capitalism about? Why do people produce what they produce?
Happiness.
Greed. Why greed? Why do they produce why do they make an iPhone?
Because they want money.
To make money, right? To make money. Steve Jobs made these to make money. They have high profit margins, right? 60%. You guys go to work to make money, right? Now, is it just about money? No. I mean, Steve Jobs loved this. He loved it because it was his vision, his idea. He wanted to do it. It was his passion. So why did they make iPhones? Because Steve Jobs wanted to. Because Apple believed it was in their self-interest to make iPhones.
And we like them.
And we like them. Because I went to buy my first iPhone. I went to the mall, right, in 2008 when they first came out. The economy was spiraling out of control. And I went to buy my first iPhone because I wanted to stimulate the U.S. economy. Because I know that all of you go to the mall because you care about your fellow man so much that you want to make sure they have jobs. And you go and you consume to make jobs available to people, right? And you pay a little bit extra when you can. So, right. Yeah, why do you go to the mall? To satisfy whose values? You own. You own. So capitalism is the system of self-interest. Producers produce because it's in their interest to produce. Consumers consume because it's their interest to consume. The marketplace is a place in which we meet in pursuit of self-interest. You go to one of those Turkish markets and you buy a rug and you're haggling, right? Altruistically, right? And all markets are that. All markets are a place in which we go to fulfill our needs, our desires, our values. We go to buy things that make us look good, feel good, make our lives better. Right? And we produce because we love it, because it gives us pleasure in making stuff. And because we can make a living at it. A good living, hopefully, in some people, and an unbelievable living. Right? Capitalism is about people's pursuit of their own self-interest. to make it kind of harsh, right? It's about selfishness. It's about people being selfish. Selfish meaning pursuit of their own lives, pursuit of their own values, right? That's what it's about. That's what free markets do, right? And we all know this. We all know that businessmen are there to make money. You know, when people tell me the financial crisis was caused by greed on Wall Street. That's right. Before 2007, there was no greed on Wall Street. Well, of course there's always been greed on Wall Street. Wall Street's always been about making money. That's it. Right? It's about making money. We can discuss whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, the making of money. It's a great thing, but that's what it's about, and we all know it. And it's about making money for themselves. It's about being self-interested. And yet, what do we as a culture think of self-interest? I don't know. I mean, I was brought up in a good Jewish household, right? And my mother taught me to think of myself last, to think of others first, to be selfless. Now, she didn't mean any of that. She didn't. But you have to advocate for that, because that, we believe, is what our moral code is all about. Being good means being selfless. Being good means being self-sacrificial. It's not about taking care of yourself. Taking care of yourself, putting your own interests first, is viewed negatively. It's viewed as bad. So the primary focus of morality in our culture, whether it comes from religion or whether it comes from a secular source, is always sacrifice. Sacrifice is noble. Sacrifice is good. And let's be clear about what sacrifice is. When I bought the iPhone, did I sacrifice?
No.
Why? I gave up $300. I like my $300.
You wanted the phone more.
I wanted the phone more. The phone was more important to me, a higher value than the $300. So I won because I got something of higher value, and Apple won because they made a profit. To them, it's worth less than $300. Win-win. What's a sacrifice then?
Win-lose.
Sacrifice is giving and getting what in return? Nothing or something less. It has to be a loss. If it's a gain, then what? Then it's a trade. Then it's just like buying an iPhone. I mean, we throw the word sacrifice out as if it's like we don't know what it means, which is exactly the case, right? Right? So, you know, when somebody hits a sacrifice fly in baseball, it's not a sacrifice, he's trying to win. It scores a run, right? So it's not a sacrifice, right? When the guy doesn't take the shot in basketball but passes, he's not sacrificing. He's trying to win. Winning is important. That's the higher value than taking the shot himself. So morality, though, is all about, the common morality is all about sacrifice. It's all about giving. It's all about doing for others. Denying self, rejecting self. Who are moral heroes?
Mother Teresa.
Yeah, Mother Teresa is the classic, right? Why is she a moral hero? What's that? Why is she a moral hero? Because she gave up everything. She grew up middle class. She gave it all up, went to India, worked with the poorest of the poor, seemed to suffer while doing it. If you read her diary, she was miserable. I mean, she was, but that's her virtue, right? If she was happy and living in a mansion somewhere and driving a Ferrari, even if she'd helped exactly the same number of people, would she be a saint? No. It's her suffering that makes her a saint.
That was in her self-interest, though.
Well, we can debate that. If she thought it was, then she was pretty dumb, right? Because look what kind of a life she led in the end. She made a mistake, a big one. But I doubt it was a mistake, because I don't think she was trying to pursue her self-interest. She never gave her self-interest a thought. She was doing what she believed was a moral duty. It wasn't about self-interest. It was about duty. It was about doing what she was supposed to do. And that was to sacrifice and not think about what's in her own self-interest. But that is noble. That is good. Our culture holds that. as the essence of goodness. Let's take somebody who I think has done a lot more for humanity than Mother Teresa. Let's take Bill Gates. Bill Gates builds Microsoft. He makes $70 billion for himself. How does he do that?
Helping a lot of people.
Helping a lot of people, right? We're all better off for Bill Gates. We pay $100 for his software. How much is the software worth to us?
More.
More than 100. It turns out a lot more than 100. Because if we really thought of the impact that the software has had on the whole world around us, it's worth thousands of dollars, if not more than that, to each one of us. And through that software, he's impacted millions and millions of people. I'd argue billions of people. Almost every person on the planet has been touched by Microsoft. Would we have an internet the way we have it today if not for Microsoft standardizing across all these platforms across globally, right? Would we have driven down the cost of computing so cheaply if not for that standardization? Now, I'm talking as somebody who's owned only Apple products since 1991, right? And it's still true, absolutely true. Now, Bill Gates has changed the world in profound ways. He's done more for the good of humanity, if you will, by making $70 billion, by the literal act of making that money, than any philanthropist has ever done and ever will do. How much moral credit does he get for that?
Zero.
Zero. Actually, a little bit of negative. Because how dare he have $70 billion? How dare he make money? Now, when does Bill Gates become kind of a good guy? He leaves Microsoft. So he's not making any money, God forbid, anymore. And he's giving it away. He's giving it away. And how would we get Bill Gates? How would we get Bill Gates to be like Mother Teresa, like to be a saint? Like sainthood from the Pope. What would he have to do? Give it all away. He'd have to move into a tent, and if he could show a little bit of blood, he would. He would have to show, he'd have to repent for all that being selfish. Then he'd be a moral hero. Now, we still view Bill Gates as kind of a business hero, but not as a moral hero. Our morality and our sense of business and he are completely separated. So think about the culture we live in. And this relates to this moral high ground idea, right? We live in a culture that respects giving back as if you took something, right? Respects philanthropy, respects charity. I'll give you one more story. I was at an awards dinner in South Carolina. Businessman Lifetime Achievement Award for businessmen. Lifetime achievement. This is a big deal, right? And I was a keynote speaker, but they gave the awards out first. So they give the awards out, and they come up and they read these long bios, 10-minute bios, right? About lifetime achievement. A minute to 2 minutes on their business achievement, 8 minutes on their philanthropy and community service. Now, I have nothing against philanthropy and community service, but give me a break. Where did these people spend most of their effort? On the business. Where did they change the world more? In their business. Where did they help people more? In their business. They hired people, they had suppliers, they created wealth in the community, and they took care of themselves and their families. They pursued their own life. They made something of their own life. That's the lifetime achievement. I made something of myself. That's the achievement. Philanthropy, community service. I mean, 1776, the U.S. was a third-rate colony. 1914, the U.S. was the mightiest industrial country in the world. That 140, 50-year span, we did that because of what? Community service and philanthropy? The United States became the strongest economic power in the world because of business. Because of profit-seeking businessmen. What? We're not doing money lending now. Right? From 150 years, that was all business. That was all profit-seeking. It wasn't philanthropy. I mean, again, I'm not against philanthropy. But we live in a culture where that is the moral ideal. Building, creating, employing, who cares? Giving the stuff that you created away, oh, that's wonderful. That's noble. That's amazing. Okay? So, giving away, noble. Creating, Bill Gates, Mother Teresa, wow. Bill Gates at Microsoft, Bill Gates philanthropy, wow. That is sick.
Yes.
That is sick. That is killing this country. It's killing this country. Because this morality of being selfless, of sacrifice being the noble ideal, of giving, of contributing, of sharing, that's a morality consistent with what?
Failure.
Christianity.
Poverty.
With socialism, with collectivism, with statism. That's a morality that says your life is not yours to live as you see fit. Your life belongs to your neighbor. Your life belongs to the people that need stuff. Your life belongs to whoever's needy out there. Your primary moral responsibility is to them, not to yourself. Not to go out into the marketplace and do the best that you can for you. But your whole moral responsibility is to people you don't know. People who need. Right? Philanthropy, that's the most important thing in the world. And I see it all the time among businessmen. You know, they're going to finish, they're going to retire, and then they're going to do something good in the world. What have you been doing the whole world? I mean, really? I mean, but they've bought into this notion that business is a negative. Why? Because it's selfish. Because it's about self-interest, and self-interest is bad. That's the moral high ground that the left has. The left dominates that. And the right can't challenge it because it agrees with it. The left and right both agree on this morality. There's no disagreement. We all agree across the entire political spectrum that the whole point of life is to sacrifice for others. The point of life is to live for the sake of other people. It's that you're all born with a moral obligation to serve. You are your brother's keeper. You're your brother's keeper. You're your brother's keeper from the moment you're born. And if you're young and healthy, then it's fine to sacrifice you to the old and sick, which is what Obamacare does, right? Right? If you're young and healthy, you pay a high premium. If you're old and sick, you pay a low premium, lower. We equate the premiums with sacrificing the young and healthy for the old and sick. That's exactly what Obamacare is. But nobody objects to that. Nobody's riled up about that. Nobody's excited about that because it's your moral responsibility to sacrifice the old and sick. They own it. What's Medicare? Medicare is the largest redistribution of wealth in human history. In human history, from the young, who are poor generally, to the old, who should be okay. Because they've had a whole life to save. And if they haven't saved, why is it the fault of the young?
Right.
And for every dollar you paid into Medicare, some of you, and the Tea Party groups always have some Medicare recipients. For every dollar you paid into Medicare, you will be spending 4. You will. And who picks up the other 3? Your kids and grandkids.
Yep.
But that's okay. Because it's okay for them to sacrifice. That's what they were born for. Our moral code tells us. Our moral code is built around that. So nobody objects. When does a Republican object to the Medicare? They never do. If they do, then they want to tinker with it. They don't want to repeal it. They don't want to do away with it as the most immoral system ever created by man. No, it's fine. Well, maybe I'm exaggerating. One of the most immoral systems ever created by man. But it is. It is. It's a massive system of sacrifice. Okay? But we view sacrifice as good, as noble, as virtuous, as moral. So that is the moral ideal. That's why the right can't win. Right? So when Social Security is passed, the right gets all upset in the 1930s. The Republicans get upset, oh, this is bad, don't do this, it's bad for the economy. They always only make economic arguments, never moral arguments, because they can't challenge it morally. And then once it's established, what do the Republicans do? Nothing. Well, it already exists. And it's not a bad thing to help old, poor people at the expense of young people. That's okay. That's what Social Security is, again. There's no retirement account for you, right? They can't say anything. And then the 1960s come along, and in the early 60s, the Republicans are fuming. They're so upset at Medicare And Medicaid, ooh, they're going to pass this, and they're fighting against it. Listen to Ronald Reagan from 1964. He's fuming. He's so angry. He objects to it. He riles against it. He makes all the right argument from an economic perspective. Even some moral arguments. And then as soon as it's passed, Republicans are going to save it. They're the biggest defenders of Medicare. They can't challenge it, because challenging Medicare and Social Security means challenging their moral beliefs. And they can't challenge the moral beliefs. They can't do it. I mean, even with Obamacare, they're struggling. You know why Republicans, this is inside stuff, why Republicans never offered an alternative to Obamacare? I mean, a cohesive alternative to Obamacare. Free market. Why? Because they couldn't deal with the pre-existing conditions. Because what do? People have pre-existing conditions. Insurance won't insure them. So what do? You have to treat them. It's our moral duty. It's our moral responsibility. You have to do it. They don't have an answer. So we sacrifice a little bit for those guys. So they let Obamacare pass. And now they won't repeal it, even if they had a chance. If Romney would have won, you guys are delusional if you think he would have repealed Obamacare. He would have tinkered with it. He would have changed it. He would have adapted it. He would have done some of the things Obama's doing anyway, because he has to, right? Because it doesn't work otherwise. He would never have repealed it. Because they can't. When was the last time a Republican repealed anything? Anything. Did they repeal Social Security when they had the House, Senate, and President? Did they repeal anything Johnson did? The last time they reformed any redistributive program was welfare reform, and that was Clinton. Republicans can't do it because they agree on the moral high ground. They agree on what's good and bad. They agree with the Democrats. There's no disagreement. Just a matter of tinkering at the edges. That's where they disagree. If we want to win, I want to win. I don't know about you guys. I value capitalism. I value freedom. Then we have to reject this morality. This morality is wrong. It's anti-life. It's anti-human life. I am not my brother's keeper. I'm not. I don't like many of my brothers. I ain't helping them. The ones I like, I'll choose to help them. Sometimes I can help them. Sometimes I can't. My kids need my help more than my brothers. I'm going to help my kids first. I don't love my neighbor like myself. I don't. I love myself much more than I love my neighbor. And I don't believe anybody who tells me otherwise. I mean, some people do. But that's because they don't love themselves. So it's easy to love their neighbor more than themselves, right? This is the test, right? I ask an audience, how many of you love your neighbor like yourself? And a few people will raise their hand. And I say, okay, but let me ask you this. How many of you love your neighbor's children more than your own? And nobody raises their hand. Then why hold that up as a moral ideal? It's ridiculous. Of course you're going to love your children more. They're yours. Of course you should love your life more. It's yours. You get to live it. You don't get to live somebody else's life. So this whole morality of selflessness and sacrifice and placing other people's well-being first has to be trashed. It has to be rejected. And we need something that defends what self-interest really means. Now, the problem with that is the idea of self-interest being corrupted. Guess who corrupted it? The people who want to believe in self-sacrifice and selflessness and everything. So what have they taught us about self-interest? They taught us that self-interest means what?
Selfishness.
Well, what does selfishness mean? Just replacing a term. Evil. Well, what does it manifest itself? What kind of behavior?
Robbing people on the street.
Yeah, robbing people in the street. So when we point to the kid in the back there and say he's selfish, do we mean he takes care of himself? No, what we mean is he's a lying, stealing SOB. He will do anything to get his way. He'll stab us in the back. He'll lie, steal, or cheat. He'll do anything to get his way. When we think of being selfish or self-interested, we think of Bernie Madoff. Was Bernie Madoff self-interested? Did he act selfishly?
Yeah.
No. Really? How did that work out for him? So think about this. If self-interest means taking care of self, did Bernie Madoff take care of himself?
No.
Did he get money in his pockets?
Yeah.
Is money what life's about?
No.
No. How did he get the money in his pockets? Did that make him happy or miserable? Miserable. Just ask him. He'll tell you that life in prison, he's happier in prison today than he was before he was caught. Why? Because when you lie, steal, or cheat, how many of you ever lied? Don't. How's it worked out? Make you happier? Makes you more successful? Thrill in life? Just, fantastic feeling, right? No, lying sucks. It's hard work. It never works out. Lying usually requires what? More lying. It requires, it requires lying. Typically, we lie to whom?
Ourselves.
People, well, ourselves, we'll put that aside. To the people we care most about, ourselves included, right? Right? Lying is an unbelievably self-destructive policy. I mean, I've reached the age, and I know some of you have too, but I've reached the age where I can't remember what I did last week exactly. I can't. I travel a lot, I do a lot of stuff. I can't remember what I did last week. Now imagine I had to lie about what I did last week. I mean, I have to remember two things. I have to remember the truth, and I have to remember the lie. Hard enough for me to remember one, but it's actually much more than two things. Because I have to remember the truth and who I told it to, the lie and who I told it to, why I told these people, why I didn't tell these people. It's like way too complicated for my simple mind. And it's destructive. I mean, you only have so many brain cells. Why use them up to lie when nothing comes of it?
Very expensive.
You're almost always caught. And it's very, if you're in business and you lie, very expensive directly at the bottom line. Absolutely. In private life, it's expensive. Try it with your spouse sometime. Right? It's horrific. Lying is a self-destructive policy. But because Bernie might have happened to get cash in his pocket, that means it's good for him? No. It's not, life is not about money. See, that they've taught us, the selfless people have taught us that we only care about money. That being self-interested is just about money. We measure success by money. No, money's good. I'm not against money, but money's not what life's about. Money's one of the many values one has in life. And it's usually a value that we use to get other values. Right? But if we undercut it all by being miserable because we're lying to everybody and we have no friends, we can't look anybody in the eye because we're deceiving everybody, then the money's worthless. The money's worthless. Doesn't give us any good. If you steal money, what is the value, one of the great values of money? One of the great values of money is it represents our ability to create, to make, to produce values in the world. And that other people value those values because we can sell them and we get, whether it's our labor, right? We can sell our labor and we get money and we feel good because we're worth something. Somebody values our efforts. And we get self-esteem from that. Because we work hard, and we get pride, we accomplish things, and we get paid more when we accomplish. Why do billionaires keep working? And not just working, but keep striving to make even more billions? Because it's a measure of the values they're creating. It's not that they need the money. It's not that they're going to spend the money. It's that it's a measuring stick. It helps, right? Wow, I created another $1 billion of wealth. Isn't that cool? It's self-esteem. It's pride that they get from it. It's that sense of self-worth. If you steal money, what's your self-worth? What you're saying is, I can't make it. I have to take it from somebody else using force. I'm no better than a caveman. That's what it is. You're returning to that period in human history where there was nothing. It was all force. We know now. So you have no self-esteem. You get no pride out of stealing. And that's why thieves are miserable. Liars are miserable. So when I talk about self-interest, I'm talking about self-interest. Living life. Making the most of your life. Pursuing the values that make you happy. Living life to the fullest. Nobody lies, steals, and cheats to get that. That's about pursuing real values. Now, what's the most real value? What's the most important value?
Life.
Life, but to pursue life, right? What are the most important values to pursue in order to get life? Work and so on, but even more fundamental than that, how do all the values that we have, where do they come from?
From your mind.
Yeah, so think about Think about what kind of an animal we are, right? Look at your neighbor. Pretty pathetic. Right? We're weak. We're slow. We have no claws. We have no fangs. Right? You try running down a bison and eating it. or facing up the saber-toothed tiger. We lose, right? As a species, we shouldn't be around. So why are we here? Not just here, but thriving. Because of our mind. Because of our reason. Every value that we have out there is a product of our mind. So if you want to live a life, what's the most important thing you should cultivate? Your mind. So your number one virtue, the number one thing that's most important for you to pursue is rationality, is your mind, is reason. You want to think. Life is about thinking. It's not about stealing, it's not about lying, it's not about cheating. You want to be selfish? I have one piece of advice for you. Think.
And grow rich.
Well, maybe. Or you might choose a profession where you don't go rich. Right? It's not about money. I chose a profession. Well, I'm not going to have a PhD in finance, right? Could have gone to Wall Street. No, but I chose to teach. Because teaching more fun than money for me. Maybe not for you. So we choose what is going to make our life the best that it can be. That doesn't necessitate money. I mean, again, I'm far from me to be against money, right? I'm all for money. But it's not the only thing. They want to paint us as it's the only thing. It's the left that are materialists. It's the left that all they care about is money. Okay. I care about life, about happiness, about success. And you can't have no money, but you don't have to have gazillions in order to have that. Okay. So being truly self-interested is about thinking. It's about pursuing your own life, your own values. It's about making your life the best that it can be. It's about human flourishing. Aristotle talked about this. Aristotle's the last moral thinker before Ayn Rand to talk about immorality, or the purpose of morality, is to give us the tools to flourish, to make the most of our lives. And that's Ayn Rand. That's Rand's moral code. It's about rational self-interest, rational long-term self-interest, which is the only kind of self-interest. There is no other kind of self-interest. It's about rational long-term selfishness. There is no other kind of selfishness. If selfishness means taking care of self, there is no lying, stealing, cheating selfishness. I call Bernie Madoff self-destructive. I call crooks and thieves and everything self-destructive. They're not self-interested. Now, what kind of socio-political world does somebody who's trying to pursue their own self-interest want to live in?
Free one.
A free one. Why? What is important to somebody who wants to pursue their own self-interest, wants to pursue their own life? They want choices. Who do they want to make the choices for? Their mother? Mother government sitting on their shoulder telling them what soft drink they can have and not have? No, they want to make their own choices. Life is about making your own choices. And you're going to make mistakes. And what's going to happen when you make mistakes? If you're rational, if you're selfish, you'll learn from them. And you'll become better. Look at the life of Steve Jobs or many, many successful people who've had to fail. But learn from that failure. Grew from that failure. So being rationally self-interested, you want to be left free. What is the enemy of the mind? What is the enemy of reason, the enemy of rationality? Force. If I put a gun to the back of your head and say, from now on, 2 plus 2 equals 5. If you behave as if 2 plus 2 equals 4, I shoot you. Can you build a bridge? Can you program a computer? You can't even cook a meal. You can't use your mind. If somebody is forcing you to a non-truth, somebody's forcing you to go against reality, you're dead. So the enemy of reason is force. So if I value reason because I value my life, then I want to live in a world free of force. I want to live in a world free of coercion. I want to live in a world where people don't force me to do things I don't choose to do. Whether I'm right or wrong, again, I'm going to make mistakes. And that's what political freedom means. Individual rights, as the founding fathers conceived them, are rights to free action, to act free of coercion. All it means to say you've got a right to life, it means you have a right to live your life as you see fit, free of other people forcing you to do things you don't want to do. That you have a right to pursue your rational values independent of other people's decision making. That's what the founders mean. That's why it means freedom. So what we need is a moral code to justify the notion of freedom, the notion of individual rights. And once you have a moral code like that, then it's easy. Does Obamacare make any sense? No, it reduces my choices. It forces me to subsidize other people. It's complete nuts. It's immoral. It's insane. Of course, I'm not going to vote for it. Does Medicare make sense? No, for the same reasons. Does public education make sense? No, for the same reasons. You can ask me about public education if you want in the Q&A. I mean, all of these statist notions don't make sense because they involve sacrificing me to something else. And it's wrong. But you see, once you have the morality down, everything else flows. Everything is easy. Everything else makes sense. And you have something to stand up against. When you accept their moral code, you can't challenge their policies. But when you reject their moral code, then their policies are immoral. They're evil. They're wrong. All the terms that they use against us, we then cower. Well, we shouldn't. Wait a minute. No, your morality is wrong. Your morality is anti-life. Your morality is anti-American. Your morality makes no sense for a human being trying to live on this earth. That's the focus, right? So, and implicitly, it is this morality, a morality of individualism, a morality of self-interest, that it's the heart of the founding of this country. Because while the founding fathers were not revolutionaries when it comes to morality, they were political revolutionaries. And they got that the morality, wasn't quite right. And you can see that from the Declaration of Independence, in my view, the most important political document in human history. You cannot understand the Constitution. The Constitution doesn't make any sense unless put in the context of the Declaration. The Declaration states the principles by which this country should be established. And the principle is that each one of us, has a right to our own life. There's no brother's keeper in the Declaration. There's no sacrifice to your neighbor. There's live your life, which means free of government coercion and free of your neighbor's coercion. We each of us have a right to our own liberty, to think the thoughts that we wish, to pursue those thoughts, whether we get a government license or not. I mean, a government license is a violation of our individual rights. You have a right to shampoo hair whether a bureaucrat believes it's okay or not. And, shampoo is ridiculous, but that's true of all licensing. The government has no job in telling you what you can and cannot do, what you can and cannot think. There's no difference. And in the most self-interested, selfish political statement in human history, each one of us has a right to pursue our own happiness. Our own happiness. Right? Now, if we want to win, what we need is a morality that justifies and underlies the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That morality, I believe, is Rand's morality. It's a morality of rational self-interest. And that is, if we're going to win, it's a revolution to bring about that morality to replace the nonsense that exists today that we need to engage in. Thank you all. Thank you.
We're going to have a question and answer period. Would you like to just recognize people, or would you prefer I do?
I can do it. It's easier.
Please try to make your questions questions and not long statements. There's a lot of people here, so there's probably going to be a lot of questions. Thank you very much. Take it away.
I just wanted to make a question about your statement about the Republicans never did anything or do anything. Clinton, it's true, reformed welfare, but he did it because of a Republican Congress. It wasn't Clinton that did it. And the other thing is, it was that we never did anything about Medicare. It was Newt Gingrich that introduced a program that said we'd get rid of Medicare and it would wither on the vine. And he got, you know what happened to him because of that statement. So Republicans have tried. Have they been successful? Absolutely not. They've been dismal in terms of their successes.
Well, you're being way too generous to Republicans. I mean, let's remember that under George Bush, when they had the House, the Senate, and the White House, we saw the largest expansion in the welfare state in America since Johnson with Part D of Medicare. Just general government spending out of control during those 6 years, put us the war aside, even independent of war-type spending. Everyone, many of the regulatory agencies that we make fun of today were established under Republican President Nixon in this case. Yes, Newt Gingrich in 1994 to 1994 and a half had had some balls, and it went away very quickly. It wasn't even that they were defeated. It was just that they couldn't stand up to Clinton. And why couldn't they stand up to Clinton? This is my point. Because they couldn't stand up to the moral argument. They were made to look like they were immoral, that it was they didn't care. They couldn't compete in the moral realm. And you see this with Obama. Why is it that Obama doesn't talk economics? He doesn't.
He's very retarded.
Well, he's not retarded. He's very smart. He talks about ethics. He talks about fairness and justice all the time. Because he knows that at the end of the day, morality trumps economics. I'll give you this example, right? I can, in 5 minutes, explain to you 100% convincingly that the minimum wage increases unemployment of unskilled laborers. This is Economics 101. It is not hard. It's supply and demand. You raise a price, the demand for that good that you've just raised the price goes down. It's simple. You do that with any product. That happens, right? This is 101, not hard. I teach this. You can teach this to students. They'll all get it in the exam. You raise the price of labor, the demand for the labor goes down. You raise the price of unskilled labor, the demand for that unskilled labor is going to go down. So unemployment among unskilled youth goes up when you raise the unemployment rate. Now, everything held constant, which is hard empirically to do. But that's the reality. That's like the law of gravity. It is. This is basic laws of economics. And you can show this, and you've got lots of examples of this. You do the test, you test the students, they all get it. They all get that if you raise the minimum wage, it actually hurts the people you're trying to help. Then you ask them, are you for the minimum wage? Oh, yeah. Because it doesn't matter. It makes them feel good as if they're helping them, even though they know it's not helping them. I mean, that's the morality. Because I saw debates online. There's a debate between two guys for abolishing the minimum wage and two guys for raising it, right? And the guy for the raising the minimum wage stands up and he says, I don't get this debate. This is a stupid debate. He says, nobody believes in abolishing the minimum wage. That would be cruel. That would be horrible. We should be debating whether to raise it or not, but not to abolish it. And that's it. He won the moral high ground. Right? That's how he establishes the moral high ground. The beginning is 7.25. Now let's talk about up. But down is unthinkable because morality, you'd hurt poor people, and it's our moral obligation and duty to help them, even though it doesn't quite help them. But remember, it helps some people. Who does it help? Who does the minimum wage going up help? It helps unions because many union salaries are tied to the minimum wage. It helps all the people working in McDonald's, who probably who are a little bit better than the younger unskilled guys, and they're going to stick around and they're going to get paid a little bit more. So we're sacrificing young inner city kids for the sake of people who already have jobs. But it's sacrifice. That's okay. That's okay. We'll give them a lot of food stamps. Yeah. Yeah, the lady in the back.
So the question is, how do you change the American psyche and culture? And it seems like it's got to start in kindergarten.
It's got to start early. So I don't think it quite has to start at kindergarten for this reason. Biology gives us a little advantage, and that is that somewhere around the ages of 14, 15, we get this burst of hormones that causes us to question everything. So that kids suddenly wake up and they don't believe anything anybody says. I mean, most of you are parents. Those of you not remember this, right? You don't want to believe your parents. You don't believe your teachers. You don't believe in authority. You're open. You want to discover the world. You want to discover truth. So I think if you can catch them, I believe the window is 14 to 30. With all due respect to everybody, after 30, almost nobody changes their minds about anything. The brain gets calcified. It's hard. I'm not saying nobody, but very few people change their minds about stuff. So if you want to make the effort, it's the young people. So how? Education, education, education. You got to expose them to ideas. You've got to teach them about the ideas. You've got to, engage them with those ideas. Now, how do you do that? So at the Institute, what we do is we basically get them to read Ayn Rand. Because the novels have these ideas in them. Yeah. And many of them will get them. Most of us probably got these ideas from Ayn Rand. So we have a program that offers free Ayn Rand books to any English teacher in the United States if they agree to teach them. And we thought, we'd get a few thousand here and there. 400,000 copies a year. Wow. So 10, 15, 20 years out, that's a revolution, in my view. Then you support them, and you give them lesson plans and teacher guides, and you do all that. Then you get the kids onto your website. We'll have a brand new website in a few weeks that is geared towards exactly that audience, high school kids, college kids coming there for the first time to discover this world. And the whole new website is going to be very much geared towards that. We're scrapping everything we do on the web to gear it towards young people. Then we hit them in college with college talks But that's what even when we go to Congress, I'll give you an example. We have an office in D.C. and we do these sessions for in Congress where we give speeches once a month. I don't want politicians to come, right? I don't actually put a sign on the door, no politicians allowed. I want the staffers to come because the staffers, average age of a congressional staff is 26. They're the ones who read the bills, write the bills, tell the congressman how to vote. But more importantly, they're self-selected, ambitious already, right? They want to make a difference. They tend to be idealistic, and they're going to go either grad school and become professors or think tank people or politicians. But I can influence them at 26. I can't influence every cantor. I've tried. Can't influence every cantor. But when they're 26, I can influence them. So that's who I invite. That's who we speak to.
What do we do now? You've got elections now. You have all these things happening.
You vote for the
GOP, for example, have a campaign.
You vote for the GOP, realizing that they're terrible, but that they're better than the alternative. But you have to be very realistic. The Republican Party today is awful. I mean, the Farm Bill. Right? Now, let me just tell you what happened with the Farm Bill, right? So Republicans got really upset about the Farm Bill, Tea Party Republicans, and they said, we don't like the food stamps, right? Food stamps, it's grown, it's all this, so we don't want the food stamps. They separated the bill out, right? And they cut food stamps a lot, and they voted for that. And then there was this other piece of the Farm Bill. You know what the other piece of the Farm Bill is? Subsidies and goodies for farmers. And we said, we'll cut food stamps, but we're going to increase this. So every Republican in the House, every single Republican in the House, including Tea Parties, voted for the subsidies and voted to cut food stamps. Now that's insane. That's not a party of free markets. Now, I would say, who cares about the food stamps? Poor people, we screwed them by having this economy where there are no jobs. That's the last battle I want to fight. Rich farmers or any farmers. Guarantees on prices, insurance that the government has to provide, that should be zero. Now, tomorrow, not in 5 years, tomorrow, should be zero. And then we'll deal with the food stamps that first prove that you're not the party of big business and the rich, and then deal with the poor. The poor are not the problem, by the way. It's the middle class and upper middle class that are the problem. Who benefits from Medicare and Social Security, which are bankrupting the country? Middle class, not the poor. So leave the poor to last. Deal with everything else first and then deal with the poor. But no, we're going to cut $20 billion off of food stamps and feel good about ourselves while we pay $500 billion in crony payments to farmers. That's what landed up. And in the final bill, Tea Party Republicans didn't vote for because it didn't cut enough from the food stamp program. Not because of this. Yep.
How would you address an otherwise objectivist leading thinker who wants to hold on to the semantic word sacrifice, or draw some arbitrary distinction between selfishness or self-interest, but who would otherwise maintain consistent belief about those semantics? Like, how would you address that one?
I mean, Jim, please.
Yeah, how would I address people, and I know people like this, who don't want to adopt the rational self-interest idea. They want to still hold the old idea that selfishness means all this bad stuff.
Well, they mostly hold on to it, but they draw arbitrary.
They draw all kinds of. I mean, it's a technical question. I think they muddy the water. I think they make it more difficult to fight because I think they confuse people. I think we should be united on the terminologies that we use, and I think it's very confusing if you start doing all this bisecting. And I think at the end of the day, selfishness means taking care of self, and then the question is, what does that mean? And that means being rational and all the things, being productive, being honest, that's what it should mean. So all these little divisions make it much more complicated, much harder to win.
Rush Limbaugh goes on the program.
Yeah, well, Rush. Well, I know, but that's Rush. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Rush. There are two different things. But I just wanted to ask you a question about. You mentioned, about the RAND. They're talking about morality of self-interest. That's the basic. And you talked about how there is a difference in morality in terms of certain moralities we should reject against other moralities. Yep. And we do live in a postmodern society of relativism, and as far as morals go, if you go around the room, I'm sure people have different morals about different things. So what I wanted to get to my point, Madison, when Madison talked about in the Federalist 55, in the Federalist Papers, he talked about the idea that there's a degree of depravity of morality in all of us, meaning mankind itself is immoral in many ways. So they were looking for the best morality too, in the sense that, like you said. So here's my point: if the Rand Institute, the idea of Rand, what you were talking about, is the self-interest is the objective of morality. The founders seem to go to a higher level than that. They went to a higher moral law when they talked about the laws of nature and nature's God. We reject that idea today. People rarely understand what that even means. You go around the room,
So I don't believe that's a higher morality. I think it's a lower morality.
Okay. What was the question?
Good question.
What is the highest morality that we could go to? We could go to get our authority to resist the tyranny of today. Because if we say that the Rand, if we talk about the Rand idea of self-interest, is that a high enough morality to justify resisting the tyranny that we face today?
So there is no high or low morality. There's morality and there's immorality. There's good and there's evil. There's right and there's wrong. There's no, there's not a high morality in a sense, I believe, and you might disagree, that there's something revealed to us from higher up. There is no such thing. There are moral philosophies, all kinds of moral philosophies. Some of them, I think, are right. Most of them are wrong. Where they come from people's minds. No matter what you believe, at the end of the day, somebody articulated them. They made it up. And the question is, are they rational? Are they not rational? Are they pro-human life, which is my view is the standard, or are they anti-human life? I believe that the morality that tells you that you are your brother's keeper, that sacrifice is good, is an anti-human life morality that has been used since the beginning of time to control you. Because if you're your brother's keeper, then I can control you because I get to tell you what your brother needs. Or your brother gets to control you because he tells you what you need. It is a wonderful morality to control you because you're not after yourself. You're not about yourself. You're about other people. And I get to talk to you. I get to tell you what other people think because, or what God thinks, because you're not communicating with God. I get to talk to him and I get to tell you how to behave. So there is no upper lower moralities. There's only one morality, or one good one and bad ones. And my argument is this: it's simple. You can choose your own morality. That the morality that advocates for self-sacrifice, the morality that advocates for statism, for selflessness, is consistent with statism. It's consistent with socialism. It's consistent with the things that you don't adhere to. And that conflict, the conflict the Founding Fathers had, and I'll admit it, the Founding Fathers did not agree with me on morality. They would have rejected, I mean, I think I could have convinced them, but I don't know. Right? I don't know. But they didn't agree with my morality. They created a political system, in my view, that was opposite of the morality that they held. They held a morality that should have resulted in socialism, but they weren't socialist. They believed politically in political freedom. And it's that conflict, the conflict between a morality of selflessness and a political system of selfishness, which have been colliding. And guess who wins when there's a conflict between politics and morality? What wins? Right. Morality. And that's why we've been drifting left. We've been drifting towards statism. And I'm saying if we want to stop that drift, I'm urging you to rethink your morality. I'm urging you to think about what kind of morality the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness entails. What is embedded in that? Isn't that the concept of sacrifice? The concept of selflessness? I don't see it. To me, the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness implies a morality of self-interest. Now, I don't like to start with politics and then go to morality. I like to go to morality. But since we all can agree on the politics, it seems, I'm going to challenge you to rethink your moral code. And I believe that if we don't, this is what I tell Tea Party groups all over the country, if you don't rethink the moral code, which is hard for you, it's hard for everybody, because it goes against what we were raised on. It goes against what our preachers tell us. It goes against what our philosophers tell us. It goes against what our teachers tell us. So it's hard. But if we don't do it, we lose. That's my argument.
Thank you. So a couple of people have asked the question, what is the solution? And you came up with one. You said education, and that's what you're doing. And I think that's great. The only problem is that only hits people at the reason, at the head level, and a lot of people aren't reasoning these days. So the question to you, and this is what I'm going to propose, and I want to get your reaction. I think we actually need to start communicating with people at the emotional level in the way that Obama does. He talks about fairness. He talks.
So let me agree with you in a certain sense. So let me just say this: if people cannot reason, we lose. We lose. If people cannot reason the technology we have, the life we have, that's finished.
To wake people up.
But how do you wake them up? I agree. Note what I used as the primary example of how we do that. Novels. Ayn Rand's novels. What's unique about novels? It's a story. It's emotion. I just lectured. Was it a cool, reasoned, analytical lecture? Or was it a passionate appeal to your emotions? I don't believe there's a conflict. I can reason with you and appeal to your emotions at the same time. It's what Ayn Rand does in the novels, what I try to do in my lectures. But I agree. I'd like to see movies, television series. I'd like to see... anybody see this short commercial Cadillac just put out?
Yes.
Just came out during the Olympics. You see it? It's fantastic. You go to YouTube, look for this commercial Cadillac. It makes fun of Europeans. It talks about what it means to be American, a certain aspect of what it means to be an American, done in a clever kind of funny way. We need that, and it's Cadillac, government motors. But that's the sad part. But it's so well done. We need more and more of that. But don't give up on the reason, and don't assume that when I say education, it's just numbers and facts. Morality. when I talk about educating for morality, there's no more emotional thing than what should I live my life for?
Absolutely. The problem with the conservative movement is that we are too focused on giving people statistics, facts, evidence. We need to start talking to people's hearts. That's the point.
Yeah, but you see, the way conservatives are using that statement today, and just read Arthur Brooks' latest stuff, is this is how they interpret it. How do you talk to people's hearts?
Children.
By selling out. By selling out. By basically telling them that, yes, the only thing we care about are the poor. But the poor do better under capitalism, and we need a safety net because because it's cold not to have a safety net. Forget it. Once you start that route, the left has won again. So you've accepted their moral code. It's absolutely true that the poor do better under capitalism than any system. We should say that. But to make that the focal point of everything we say is a complete sellout. And then to give it on the safety net, a complete sellout. So the way conservatives use that idea of going for the heart is going for selflessness and sacrifice and living for others and you are your brother's keeper. And that's not what going to the heart should be. What going to the heart should be, I think, is appealing to people's self-interest. It's appealing, those army commercials, be the best that you can be? That's what we're about. We're about individuals being the best that they can be, living their life to the fullest, having a happy, fulfilling, flourishing, successful life. That's an appeal to emotion that is to the hearts of people that can really drive. It's what the founders did, right? You have a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What's more to the heart and to the mind at the same time than a statement like that? Read the Declaration of Independence, right? If you read it properly, you should have tears in your eyes. And when you read, they list the reasons why they're revolting. Tick off all the ones that exist today, and you can add many more. Right? We're in worse state than they were under the British, and yet, yeah, in the back.
You're talking about things. It's very hard to get rid of these social workers like Social Security or Medicare. The thing I usually talk to my liberal friends about is, the whole thing about freedom and choice. It's like, okay, well, if you believe in these things, then you should make it a choice. If you can opt in or opt out of Medicare, right? Only those people with a brain in their head would opt out, and it would collapse, right? And of course, you kind of hint at that, and then they quiver. But if you're really into freedom, right? If you believe that it's a great idea, then you should be able to. But they don't. Without forcing it on them, right?
Yeah, but you see, you think they believe in freedom. I mean, think about what we're doing with Obamacare right now. There've been newspaper article after newspaper article after newspaper article demonstrating the fact that Obamacare is basically sacrificing young people to sick and old people. And nobody cares. Everybody goes, fine. I mean, isn't that what insurance does? Well, of course it doesn't. Yeah, well, that's the other excuse. Young people will eventually be old because the system would be bankrupt by the time they're old. But yes, that is the reasoning, right? You'll be old one day. But right now is when I'm trying to make a living. Right now is when I want to start my business. Right now is when I need that extra dollar. I can save up so when I'm old I can pay higher premiums. And hopefully I'll be richer when I'm old so I'll be able to afford higher premiums. Who hasn't asked? Yeah.
Yes, I agree with everything that you've been saying. 100%.
That's scary.
100%. And I'd just like to add that, yes, I believe that we are born into this world. You can see it in little babies. We want. It's nature. Everybody comes into this world wanting something. And that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing.
Absolutely.
So you're right. We should frame it in that way. But also, I think that experience teaches, not words, and we may be going through a cycle where we will have to feel the pain, and then the young people, your timing will be right.
So let me tell you something about pain. Human history suggests that when time gets really, really, really bad, people don't actually wake up and say, if only we were freer. What they do. Because how did it get bad? It got bad because their values are slowly eroded and eroded and eroded, and they never spoke up and eroded. And when they get to that point, they say, where's a strong man who can lead me out of this? Every example of massive economic decline has led to further decline. When Rome fell, the Romans didn't wake up, oh, if only we'd kept the Republic, let's go back to the Republic. No, I mean, partially it was too late, the barbarians were already there. And partially it's because they'd forgotten and they didn't know and they were desperate and they wanted somebody to help them. And when the Weimar Republic, you know, the economy was in shambles, they didn't wake up one day and say, oh, all we need is to respect individual rights. That's what it is. No. Here's this guy who promises us a great Germany. Now, there's a hope, and the hope is this, that I think we're heading towards some kind of economic, really bad stuff that'll be much worse than 2008. I think it's inevitable. I don't know when it's going to happen, but it's inevitable. The question is, my hope is this, that we can get the word out there enough so that when the economic collapse happens, there'll be enough people who say, you know, there were these people who were talking about an alternative. And maybe we should try that. Because that is the hope. That there were these books I read, there were these talks I heard, there was the stuff that was out there that actually offered something different, a return to the principles of the founding of this country. And that's the hope, is that they wake up, that the shock wakes them up. But again, there's no example of that in actual human history, so it would be a first if we did that.
According to Wikipedia, there's about between 1 million and 2 million Tea Party people who call themselves Tea Party. Since there's a political movement that wants to reject tyranny, do you think it would be good for the Tea Party people to try to impeach each other by trying to adopt this morality, as you're trying to do by offering the books to the younger people too? So since, you know, for example, the Founding Fathers had a very good political movement that brought freedom to this country, their morality was contrary, of course. But they brought this freedom. Now the Tea Party, if they were to adopt this morality, could be, even for 1 million people, a pretty significant force. Sure. 1 to 2 million people. Wouldn't that be something that, just like all these groups in Washington that scream and yell to get things done, couldn't they have a much greater impact than changing the whole country from children?
Absolutely, and this is why, you know, I speak to Tea Party groups. You know, you guys are the only hope the country has. In many ways, you're the only voice out there speaking for economic liberty. There's no other voice speaking for economic liberty out there as a grassroots effort, if you will. And if we're going to save the country from economic liberty perspective, it's the Tea Party that's going to do it. You know, but it's a challenge because the Tea Party rejects this morality, you know, explicitly, implicitly. So it is an issue of education. Educate, educate, educate. Whether it's educate kids, educate Tea Partiers, educate. But we can't, if the Tea Party grants the left the moral high ground, the Tea Party will lose. That's my fundamental message. The other question I think Tea Parties have to ask themselves, more on the politics side, is should you be aligned with the Republican Party? Should you consider a third party? Yeah, well, no, the Republican Party was a third party. It got rid of the Whigs, right? The Republican Party is sick, really sick. It doesn't know what it stands for. It's got moderates who stand for nothing. You know, I read now there are 4 different parts of the Republican Party all fighting with one another. There's the religious right that only care about the social issues. There's the moderates who don't care about anything. There's the free market group, and I can't remember what the 4th is. Theocons, I said. That's the rhinos are the moderates who don't care about anything. I mean, maybe it's time. Maybe it's time. And yeah, you'd lose a few elections. But long term, maybe it's the only hope this country has. I don't think it's something that should be off the table. I think it's something to be considered as an alternative political movement. But if you do that, it has to be based on the principles of individual liberty, and it has to therefore get away from all the social issues that kill the Republican Party. This Republican Party is dying, in my view, because of the religious right. And you're not going to get young kids, you're not going to get kids voting for the Republican Party, and the kids are the future at the end of the day. They'd rather pay for Obamacare than vote against gay marriage.
Right.
Yeah.
So my question is, do you think it's going to get to the place where we might have to make up another revolution and overthrow the government because it's screwed up? That it's not going to change from a small group of people.
it might, but I hate to say it because the founders had a pretty rough time because they were up against the British. But these guys in Washington like have nukes and big tanks, and I think we're a long way away from that. And I think if it comes to that, then it's horrific. Don't romanticize what a revolution looks like. A revolution isn't, for most of us, is the end of the world because most of us won't survive it.
Guerrilla warfare is different.
And guerrilla warfare and so on. But don't remind. Plus, it's about you have to kill people. Yes. No, it's not pleasant. And you're killing Americans. You're not just killing anybody. So. Yeah. I'm not an advocate. If the time comes and it's necessary, so be it. And this is this is when I think it's necessary. It's when we lose free speech. When we lose the ability to do this. We're losing elements of free speech. There's no question.
They're trying to shut down the radio.
Well, they're not trying to shut down the radio. They're trying to.
You're sending in their hugs.
No, they're trying to establish what they call fairness doctrine, which is bad. It's very bad. But remember, the fairness doctrine existed in the 60s and 70s, and it wasn't that free speech was gone in America. It's bad, and it's getting worse, and they will come after free speech. There's no question they will come after free speech. What the IRS did is a big step towards going after free speech. That is the most horrific thing the Obama administration has done. Why everybody's quiet about it, I have no idea. But the fact, using the IRS for political purposes, I don't care if it's left or right, is the most horrific thing this government has done. So. Yeah, they're going after it, but we still have the opportunity to get our ideas out there. It's still true that radio is dominated by conservatives. It just shows you the weakness of those conservative radio talk show hosts that we're not winning, right? Because they dominate. There's no problem in the media. Conservatives get upset about the media. What problem in the media? There's more pro-conservative media today than in human history. I mean, Ronald Reagan won in an era where there were 3 networks, ABC, NBC, CBS, that's it. All of them hated his guts. And he won. Today, when was the last time anybody here saw ABC, CBS, or CNN, or any of these networks' news? I don't watch television news at all. I get all my news on the internet. And I have 1,000 different venues I can get it from the internet, right? So the options from the perspective of media are so vast today that the media is not the problem. Yeah.
Lincoln and the Republican Party took over the Whigs from a moral position.
That's right.
They had the moral high ground about being against slavery, being for human rights, and that's where we have to be. We
That's right.
have to get to the guts of people.
That's right.
Which is what I think you're saying. What Mark was saying.
So we have to we're for individual rights. We're for individual rights. We're not for state rights. We're not for this rights. We're not for that rights. We're for individual rights. And individual rights mean individual rights. It means government, get out of our lives, out of our boardrooms, out of our bedrooms, leave us alone, let us live our lives. And that's a political party that stood for that. Even if it wasn't if it was radical as I am, it would lose. I'm not saying put number 1 on your agenda the repeal of Medicare. You'd lose if you did that. You have to do something about Medicare. Paul Ryan's plan is not a bad first step, make it a voucher system, but you have to have principles. You have to stand for something. You have to have the moral high ground. Start with a political party that stands for individual rights, that takes a pro-economic liberty and a pro-social liberty perspective. And I think a political party like that today could win.
Yes.
It would win. Now, it might take 2 or 3 political cycles to win, but the Republican Party is dead. It's finished. Because it doesn't stand for anything. It has no moral high ground. It's against the poor, and anybody who says that's not true, just look at the Farm Bill. It's pro-subsidies for the rich. Look at the Farm Bill. It's an awful, awful political party that wants to repress gays, wants to repress women. It does.
Nobody wants to go to the party.
Nobody wants to go to the party. We all vote for Republicans because we hate the Democrats more. But fine, but there's no indication that that's possible because they have the money and the infrastructure. Replace them. The Libertarian Party is a disaster. Start something new. Start something new. That's my urging of you. Yes.
Is religion the basis of this negative moral code?
Religion is one of the bases. Religion is one of the bases. Many of this comes from religion. The idea of self-sacrifice is the noblest thing one can do. It comes from Christianity. Many of these ideas come out of religion, but the secular philosophers are the same. For 2,000 years, I mean, again, the last philosopher to advocate for morality focused on human individual flourishing was Aristotle. Since Aristotle, you know, maybe Spinoza, right, came close. But other than that, it has been an orgy of sacrifice and selflessness, of the individual doesn't matter. The individual's life is not what's important. Indeed, happiness doesn't matter. Why is your happiness important? When the group is out there, and they need you to help them.
When I look at, and as a practicist, I mean, the Republican Party is what we have. I don't think we have the luxury of more cycles, because having Obama in his second term is going to take a lot of repair just to undo what he's done. But, and I agree with you on the social issues. I mean, to me, and as someone who had lifelong Republican, spent my adult life in Boston, New York, and now Santa Monica, I know hardcore liberals, which is only supposed to be 20% of the electorate, you're never going to get anywhere with, because they don't care about Europe.
That's right.
They don't, and they won't even listen to you. But independents listen, and in my experience, the Republican Party loses the independents on these social issues, and what you have to do to win an election is you have to get off these 1950 social mores. It costs you the independence.
But the Republican Party cannot do that.
Well, if they don't, is it better to have another Democrat president? I mean, that's...
No, if the Republican, I agree with you. If the Republican Party got off the social issues,
yeah.
Wow, that's great. But they can't. But they can't because their base is the evangelical South. That's their base. That's where it is. So you can't win without that. Yeah, you can't win without the evangelical South. And that's.
Would they rather have Obama? I mean, would they rather?
Yes, in Ohio, many people did not come and vote. The reason, if you look at the actual statistics of this election, Obama got fewer votes than he did in last election. The problem was Republicans didn't show up, particularly in places like Southern Ohio, which is evangelical. They wouldn't vote for a Mormon, and he wasn't religious enough, so they'd rather have another Obama. I mean, don't argue with me. I'm not arguing for that. I'm just telling you that's the reality.
If you got California, which is a 45
I know.
state, who needs them?
But for that, you need a third party. You're not going to change the Republican Party in that sense. Unless you had a Ronald Reagan type candidate. Yeah. You know, because Ronald Reagan brought the evangelicals into the Republican Party. They weren't there before. They were Democrats before Reagan. Reagan brought the moral majority in with the Republican Party. To get that part of the Republican Party out is going to require some great leader, which doesn't exist because all the good guys on economic policy right now within the Republican Party are socially right of Attila the Hun, right? I mean, Rand Paul, who I like on economic policy, is for changing the Constitution to make conception the beginning of individual human life.
That's what I mean. It just makes
It's life, yeah. It's a reality, in other words.
I happen to believe that the base of compassion, which the left likes to use as its moral high ground, is capitalism.
Yes.
Why isn't somebody selling that on the right?
Well, I mean, Arthur Brooks is selling that. Arthur Brooks is selling that all over the place. And it's true, but I believe that if we lead with that, we lose.
Would you repeat that for us?
That compassion is on the side of capitalism. Capitalism is the most compassionate system because it helps the poor more than any other system. The poor do better under capitalism than under any other political economic system. And we should trumpet that all over the place. But that can be the lead because the standard is not the poor. The standard is the individual. And the individual does better under capitalism than any other system. Poor, rich, middle class. The only people who do worse under capitalism are who? Who does worse under capitalism? Well, statists, looters, lazy bums. You know, wife-beating drunks do worse under capitalism, right? Because they get the check and food stamps. in the current system, and they wouldn't get anything. Nobody would give them charity. They would starve in the streets under capitalism. Good. Right? So it's anybody who's willing to work, anybody who's willing to be positive about their own life, take any kind of responsibility over their own life, is better under capitalism, poor, middle class, or rich. If you're rich, but you got rich by getting handouts from the government, capitalism's not good for you. If you're middle class, but what you love about the middle class is Medicare and Social Security, that is not having to worry about saving, right? Capitalism is not good for you. Capitalism is good for people who are willing to think for themselves, save, take responsibility. In other words, any responsible individual human being. And that's what our focus should be. And yes, that includes the poor. But that's it. Once we lead with that, we've accepted the idea that it's their poverty that makes them special. Their poverty doesn't make them special.
Why?
Why does poverty make you special?
No, why does that equate
because what?
As the most compassion?
No, because I don't think capitalism is compassionate, right? Capitalism just is. It's not compassionate. It helps. It happens to be the system under which the responsible poor do the best.
And they're talking about morality.
But that's the responsible middle class and the responsible everything. See, but compassion is not morally that important. Yeah.
Hi, Yaron.
Two more questions.
I'd like to give the opportunity to talk about education a little bit.
Yeah.
And I guess it seems to me like public education is spinning out a lot of ignoramuses that people can't think. And how do you think, I know you're doing outreach with ARI, but how do you think you reach those people?
Well, again, I think you reach those people through the books, through lectures like this. You reach them through, hopefully one day movies, plays, whatever. We need to do more of that. You reach them where they are. So you go to campuses. You try. We're trying to create a student movement. You go to where they are and you try to engage them with these ideas. I don't know any other way to do it. Now, ideally, the idea would be to eliminate public education because it is enemy number one. And I mean eliminate public education, right? It should go. We should sell the schools and bring real innovation competition into education, and you'd create a phenomenal product. I mean, you can't even imagine how good education could be if it was truly 100% privatized. And we should advocate for that. See, the other thing that young people are interested in is kind of exciting ideas. This goes back to the heart, right? They want to get, I go to campuses and I tell the kids, I said, in the 60s, kids your age were in the streets. They were demonstrating. They were pissed off. Now, they did some bad things, but generally, they were out there demonstrating in the streets. Why? Because there was a draft. Evil, awful draft, right? What is there today? Today, you're in a worse situation in a draft. As soon as you hit 18, you've got, if you count the unfunded liability, you've got over $300,000 of liabilities, right? And that's just the beginning. That's without student debt or anything like that, and probably without the pension plans of all those government employees and so on. You're immediately, then you've got Obamacare, which penalizes you for being young and healthy. And then you've got to pay all these bills. You're in a worse situation than those kids were in the 60s. Because in those days, I can't remember what it was, 1 in 10 was drafted or something like that. Today, it's 100% of you are screwed. Every single one of you will have not as good of a job in your future. You'll make less money than your parents. You think your grandparents' generation was the greatest generation? Bullshit. One of the worst generations ever. The fact that they fought a great war does not give them the right to suck your blood, which is what they're doing to their grandkids, right? You should be out in the streets. You should be demonstrating. You should have them all high ground. If they could do that in the 60s, you should be 100 times more outraged than they were. You got to give them a cause. And the cause should be their own life and their own happiness. Get kids out into the street demonstrating against Medicare, against Obamacare. You see, they voted for it. And to some extent, they voted for it because of the social issues, because they refused to vote for Republicans over that. And to some extent, it's because nobody's told them this stuff. Not in these terms, not in the sense of how much of their lives they're giving up for these kind of programs. And this is the other point that's important to make. when you take people's money, everybody goes, oh, it's just money. But what is money? Money is time. And what is time? Time is life. If you said the draft, you're picking somebody up and you're putting them in Vietnam and there's a 1 in something chance they'll die or get maimed. Horrible, right? But here you're taking a person and you're taking 50% of an income through his life, because with the unfunded liabilities, they're going to have to be taxed at much higher rates than we're taxed today. And you basically said 50% of your time, 50% of your life needs to be dedicated to those people, not to you. That's disgusting. Disgusting is the right word. And that's hot, right? That's hitting them at the gut. That's what you need to do with young people to get them motivated, to get them out into the streets, because they should be in the streets. You've asked. This is the last question.
Is it hypocritical to be fundamentally against Medicare and Social Security and blanket programs, but be on them at the same time? Or do you view it as a form of restitution?
I view it as a form of restitution. Absolutely. I mean, I drive on the roads. I'm against public funding of the roads. I'm against public funding of a lot of things. But I live in this world. I'm being taxed. It's not like I'm not paying for these things. Why would I not use them? It's my life. So Ayn Rand made the opposite point. If you're for Social Security, you have no right to get it. Because you're for coercion. You're for forcing people. You're for stealing their stuff. You're the one who doesn't have the right. I'm fighting against it. I don't want coercion. I want true freedom. So I'm getting some of my money back. My money back. That's the approach I think it takes. I don't think it's hypocrisy to take this stuff any more than to drive on the streets when you believe streets should be privately owned.
Let's show our appreciation. Thank you.